Front-End Authority is an online community that promotes the ongoing education of front-end technologies.
Hey guys, I'm Reza and I'm one of the founders of Housecall. So my goal tonight with this presentation is to give you guys a rough overview of how my team got started with JavaScript, kind of a case study. I feel especially qualified to be able to give this talk because I know very little about JavaScript. So this is kind of like a story of what I went through, all right? So me and the rest of the Housecall team, we came from a mobile team at Qualcomm. We know how to write apps. We can write APIs that go behind them. Not so much web products, not so much anything that runs in your browser. So it was a really good fit when we decided to build Housecall. Originally, Housecall was Uber for your house. You hit a button on your phone and you can get a plumber or a maid or a handyman or a carpet cleaner to come over and do some work. And just like Uber, you can see them driving over, you can pay with your phone, and it's all seamless. But to get this service working, we had to build an app for the consumer. That's that one on the right. And then we also had to build an app for the service providers. So they can basically list their availability, their pricing, and then update the status of the various jobs they're doing. And I mean, we worked really hard to get this marketplace up and running. You may have even heard some of our ads or on the radio, following you on the internet, a little banner in the sky with a plane. No, we didn't do that one. While we're building the marketplace, we're constantly getting feedback from our service providers saying that they love using our app to track the jobs they get through Housecall, and they get jobs through other avenues, and they want to use our app to track those as well. You know, their regular customers will call them up and say, hey, can you come next Tuesday? And they already have an app that like does that for them. They're like, can I put my customers in here? So this is great news for like a startup starting up. We're like, great, we found a product that people are like want to use. We even started charging a SaaS fee for using the pro side, so that's that right side of the screen. So as we get more and more businesses using our product, and the businesses get more and more sophisticated, we realize there's some things you just can't do from an app or that aren't conducive to an app. So if you're like a four-person plumbing business, you got 4 trucks on the road, you're going to have a dispatcher that sits in the office, takes phone calls, schedules, dispatches, does invoicing, orders parts, all that stuff, and that person isn't going to be on their phone. They're going to be on a computer. So that's where we come into building our web portal, which is like how we got dumped into JavaScript. So our team don't know how to build anything with JavaScript or web, but we have customers that want to pay for our software. So we're like, we're going to do it. Our backend for both of the apps is built on Rails. So naturally, the web product is also built on Rails. I mean, doing web development in Rails, luckily, is pretty straightforward. You know, browser hits a URL, the server does a bunch of work, you can write Ruby, and then it returns a template with HTML. Back to the browser, boom, easy peasy. But as we're building more and more features, we realize like JavaScript's usefulness to building actually useful UIs that can do things besides just sending HTML back and forth to the server. But we don't really have a good systematic or deliberate way of adding JavaScript. And none of us have the expertise to figure out what to do. So I'm going to give you some examples of some of the bad things we did. So here we got some HTML and just some JavaScript on the bottom. And our code was littered with all this stuff. Here we have, in an HTML file, some server calls. It's lovely. But I mean, what are our options? So if you don't know JavaScript, you jump in, there are tons of frameworks you can use, right? And this is probably even old. Like, I'm sure there's tons of stuff in here I don't know about. But remember, we don't know anything about JavaScript. We don't know how to evaluate what's good for us, what isn't. We don't know what has good community support. what frameworks are going to be abandoned a year from now, or which frameworks are going to make us write really bad, unmaintainable code, or which are conducive to writing clean code. Or maybe we're going to commit to one framework, go in, and then 6 months down the line realize, hey, we have this feature we need to build, and it just won't work with this framework. And at the same time, we have customers pounding on our doors saying, hey, like, we need you guys to build these features because I'm running my business using your software, and like, you guys kind of haven't finished building it yet. That's always the case. One thing that's common across most of these frameworks is they are various implementations of the model view controller design pattern. And server guys, we get MVC. MVC, as you may know, is probably like the most famous of the design patterns. It works great on the web. What we wanted to do was basically build our code in a way that we would be able to get familiar with JavaScript and perhaps find a way to swap it out later once we know more of what we're into. So just so I can get a gauge, how many of you are familiar with like MVC and how the pattern works? Okay, cool. And I'll do a quick little overview. So MVC is, you have your view, which is your UI. It's what the user sees. There's buttons on there they click. There's text fields they fill out. There's things they interact with. And then your model is your data store. In the case of having JavaScript that runs in the browser, your model is everything in the server, all your data, all your objects. And then the controller manages the interactions between the view and the model. So the good thing about this is you can mess with your server and the network calls back and forth. You don't have to change your view. You can change your view, and as long as your server calls stay the same, you can leave the model the same. So it gives you a fair bit of modularity. All right. So here's what we did. We built not really a framework, but kind of a lightweight library of using MVC to keep our code clean and dry. And we get to avoid the risk of picking the wrong framework. And we have the option to go back later and plug in some library or framework. So I want to go look at a concrete example. This is this one on the right here. And this is start job. So here, this is a screen of our product. You're some plumbing business. You're going to go to someone's house and do some work. So you click the start button, and it lets the customer know you started. So we have one basically MVC for this little modal. Let's just start, and I'm going to walk through it. It should be pretty straightforward. So you initialize it. You create a controller, create a model, create a view, wire them all up together. And generally, let me go back to here. The big actions are you load up a view, and the view needs some content. So ask the controller for some data. Controller goes, hey, model, go get some stuff from the server. When you're done, tell me. And when it's done, where are we? There we go. When it's done, sends it back to the controller. Controller sends it back to the view to update itself. Or conversely, the user hits some stuff on the view, clicks the submit button, and control hits the controller. Controller goes, hey, model, go send this stuff to the server. So we're going to do, I click the start button here. So here's a bunch of view code. And then somewhere down here we have, when you click on the start button, do some stuff, and then tell the controller the submit button was clicked. The controller doesn't have to know what the view looks like, doesn't have to know how the model works. All it knows is the submit button was clicked. When the submit button is clicked, I gotta tell the model to submit this data. I'm gonna ask the view for all its data, send it to the server, and send it to the model, and tell the model when you're done, either call this callback or this callback, whether you succeeded or failed. And the model, it's also pretty straightforward. You come in, model gets a payload, sends it to the server, and just calls back. Everything's pretty self-contained. You don't really have to know how the other pieces work with each other. And you can test each one individually. So this is kind of where we were about a year ago. Actually, before I keep going, anybody have any questions on this stuff here? No? Cool. So this is where we were about a year ago. Since then, we've kind of decided on React, which works luckily really well with what we've built. So React is the V part of MVC. So I'm going to go through another example, and we basically pulled out all the Vue code we wrote, put in React components, and the rest stayed the same. We have not reactified this flow, so it's going to be a different flow. So let me go down. Here we go. This is merge customer. So you can see it's pretty similar. Create a model, create a controller, and this time instead of creating a view, you're going to create some React components and pass in the controller. So on this one you can say, hey, this React view, when you're done, call this controller method, and when you're closed, call this controller function. And the controller, it does very similar to what it used to do. So, handle form submit. The controller just asks the view for its data, gives it to the model, tells it to go, and the model does the exact same thing it used to do, which is take some data, send it to the server, it comes back, run the success block or the failure block. And that's pretty much it. I don't think I have anything else I want to go over. Do you have any questions?
Can you show the React side again?
Oh, I did not show the React side, but I can, yeah. Here, let me pull it up. So let's go merge customer view. All right, we're going to see if we can make this a little bit bigger, perhaps. Is that visible? Yeah. All right. So this is a bunch of our React code. So here's the part that's actually the view. So this view is actually a little complicated because it's merging two customer records into one. So you have to you basically give the user a chance to deconflict. I have two customers in my database, but they're really the same customer. I need to put them together. So I need to pick which one has the right fields. But this is the React view. We don't have, again, not a JavaScript guy, so this isn't pretty. But it's working for us so far. So far, so good. But yeah, so you have this view, and then down here, somebody's going to click a button, right? Where's the button?
It's the A tag. 9274.
There we go. We got an A tag. Oh yeah, this pops open in a modal. All right, so the modal is the one that does the actual work. Let's go find, is there a modal in here? Merge, customer, modal. There it is. All right, so you come into the modal, you click, hey, I'm done, go ahead. So we do here, and this comes in. And it goes, hey, whatever my onSubmit property was, call it. And that should be back to here. Let me go up to this guy. Here we go. So when we created this modal, my onSubmit property was this method on the controller. So it goes back into our lightweight MVC pattern. Anybody else? No? Okay.
Is there any advantage to use React instead of the library that you did at the beginning 1 year ago?
Yeah, I mean, the reason we did it is because we found ourselves writing just straight JavaScript to do simple UI actions that should be, there's libraries for that we can use. You just find yourself writing a lot of boilerplate code, and I should not have to write the JavaScript code for what happened in check off a checkbox and go gather all the checked values on this checkbox. Yeah, so React gives you a lot of functionally useful things, and you know, it's pretty too. At least some of the libraries. I think we're starting to pull in Material UI, so it helps. There's a bunch of React support. Yeah.
Do you have any tips for people going from like a vanilla or custom JavaScript framework to React?
So I don't know about going from a vanilla one. One thing I've been really struggling with is getting React components to play nice in a Rails app. It's a real pain in the butt to get going. We are running it. Actually, there was this really fun article. I'm sure you all saw it, but it was, you know, what it's like to learn JavaScript in 2016. And like I was reading this and I'm like, oh my God, this describes my life. So I'm just gonna like list off a bunch of little names of things. I don't know what they do, but I followed this tutorial, and that's how we've got React working in Rails. We basically have, so we have NPM working, and then we use Browserify to get all the node modules in to the Rails server, and then there's a Rails gem called React Rails that we use so that we can basically inject React components into our Rails views. Yeah. All right. Yes.
I noticed you have like ES2015 style like import and exports everywhere, but the rest of your code is like not ES2015 JavaScript. That's sort of like just a artifact of like a gradient from JavaScript that wasn't ES2015.
No, I have no idea what that is.
Oh, okay. Yes, Babel.
I think there's a Babel in our package.json somewhere, but I don't really know what it does.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go. Look at that. We got some Babel in here. Something bad going on over there?
Wait, see, zero the experimental features?
Yeah, the syntax cannot set yet, and can change whatever you release.
Oh, yeah.
See? That's good stuff. All right. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you probably don't rely on any of those features.
All right. Yeah, I don't think we're doing anything too bleeding edge. All right. Thank you, guys.